I don't know if I've ever been this conflicted about a book and whether I like it or I don't. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be talking about such an interesting book for me, a book that I have still not rated yet, and my goal is to rate it by the end of this video, but I really have some conflicted feelings about it. And that book is The Gates of Fire by Steven Pressfield. Now, before we get too far into it, let me go ahead and tell you what this book is about. This book is often sold as the Battle of Thermopylae, and if you have seen the movie 300, that is the battle that this book is constantly being told that it's what it's about. And in reality, it's not. While yes, a decent portion of this book does take place during that battle, and we get a lot of information about it, this is really the tale of a soldier and their life. And I think that's maybe part of the problem with this book, is it's always sold that it's action and this epic battle that people my age, I think most of us have seen Zack Snyder's 300 and are slightly influenced that with our action movie takes. I mean, who doesn't love the kick? It's great. And that is kind of how this book is sold. When you Google it, that's what it says. It says it's about the Battle of Thermopylae. And like I said, in reality, it's not. I mean, yes, it's there, but this is really the tale of like Sparta, the lead up to that battle, and kind of the just grind and torture, just the living situations and training that the Spartans and other Greek cities of the time kind of went through to build their army and everything. And that is definitely, I think, a very important thing to mention for this book, because I think setting the proper expectations would really change how people felt about this and would decide whether or not they wanted to read it. If you're looking for just like a super fast-paced action, bloodbath, that's not what this is. You do get some of it, but it is by far and away a much more, growing, I don't want to say coming to age tale, because it's not, and it's also told from an interesting lens of a captured soldier kind of living his past up into the Battle of Thermopylae. But yeah, this is, I think it's really important to note, because this was kind of sold to me as that battle, and it is definitely not. So just some quick overall thoughts for me. Like I said, I think I was sold this book one way and it didn't meet that expectation, which is why I feel so strange about it. And I think this is a me thing. I just don't know if historical fiction is for me. I read one other, and actually that's not even a historical fiction book, but this book reminds me of it. I believe it's 1776. It's about George Washington. I can't remember the author right now. I'll try to remember to put it up on screen. But that book, the whole time I found it interesting in the way you would find an old like World War II documentary interesting, but I didn't always find it the most enjoyable to read. And that's how I feel about this book. It is very well done in every aspect of how you would judge a book. Its prose, the storytelling, the mechanics, does it drag, all these kinds of things. Does it actually tell a good story? And the answer is absolutely yes. This is a fantastic book that I just don't think I enjoyed at all. Not at all. I mean, there were definitely some parts that I did like and did enjoy, but I think overall, and like I said, I'm still trying to rank this book. I'm kind of teetering between a 2-star, meaning I didn't really like it, and a 3-star, which means I liked it. But for me, I judge books on my personal enjoyment out of it. And I try to not really, lean too heavily on things like prose and that kind of stuff. I think people who do that are great, but that's just not me. I'm always kind of going on the vibes. And yeah, I think right now I'm gonna go ahead and give it that 2-star rating, with the caveat that this is a fantastic book, that this is a really good book that I just didn't enjoy. If some kind of Greek historical recounting from childhood to kind of adulthood or young adulthood of a Spartan is something you're looking for, this is a great book. If you were super into like Greek history, all that kind of stuff, this is a great book. If you were looking for an action-packed, like 300, but in book form, this is not it. And that's kind of what I wanted out of this, and it's not what I got. So yeah, there's my rating. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to come up with it or not, but I am going to give it 2 stars. I hate being negative. I always want to read things that I like, and I have a lot of respect for this book. like I said, this is a super well done book. It's just, I think it's just not for me, unfortunately. With that being said, let me go ahead and mention some things I like before I mention some other things I didn't like, and let's go to that. So even though I just gave this book a 2-star rating, I think this is a book I'm going to buy physically. I listened to this on audio, but I think this is going to be a book I buy because there is some amazing dialogue, one-liners, and just like, I'm going to call it like locker room talk. When I say that, I mean like there are just some like dudes bullying each other in like a very like football team kind of way. I played football all through high school, and like some of that talking where like, you know, you guys are in a very highly competitive environment and you're going at it, it's very physical. There's just some of that. And then also, you know, I think people kind of refer to it as trauma bonding now, but like that relationship you build with people when you're going through something that's really hard, and just people who have been in these kind of environments will know what I mean, but where people just say some of the most outrageous, disgusting things, and I don't mean in like a bullying way, but I mean just kind of like in a disgusting way almost. But there are just some crazy lines in here. There's one about, you know, he's talking about how miserable their situation is, and it couldn't be worse even if a snake swam up him and laid a serpent in him, or, you know, stuff like that. It made me laugh, it cracked me up, and I don't know, that was just great. And there are also some like great, not victory moments, but like honorable moments where, you know, the Spartans are obviously, I mean, spoiler for 2,000-year-old history, but are standing up to the Persians, and, you know, they will not back down. And, you know, the come and take them, the lines, you know, just all those kinds of things. The we'll dine in hell, we'll fight our battle in the shade of their thousands of arrows. You know, all those kinds of things are great. And I'm normally not like a book highlighter or anything like that, but I would love to, and I think I'm going to buy a physical copy of this book and just kind of skim through it and find some of those great lines, because they are fantastic. One other thing I really liked about this book is it's grounded in reality with just enough embezzlement. Is that? Yeah, embezzlement, where, you know, humans can obviously only do so much, and they can only be pushed to a certain point, but there's just that little bit of extra that almost makes some of these guys like mythological beings and stuff. You know, I think it was just done well, where, okay, this person got stabbed like 3, 4, 5 times by these 8 long spears, but don't worry, they didn't just die. They kept battling, they kept going. They dug deep and survived for another half hour and slew 8 more Persians. Like that kind of, you know, pseudo-realism that, you know, definitely happens when we look at historical accounts, I think was done really well here. You know, battle numbers and things are always something that are highly questioned when you look back at history, and, you know, it'll just be like, there was 1 million of X, Y, and Z, and it's like, was there really? Because that's like a lot of people. But that just like, you know, realism kind of blend of like, man, they went through awful stuff, they survived things that there's no way they could have, but it told a good story, and I did enjoy that. And with that being said, I will also mention I really liked the grittiness that was in this book. Growing up, and anytime anybody, especially after 300, talked about Sparta and just like how hardcore they were, that tone definitely resonated in this book, which I think is a good thing, because I don't know, let me live in the delusion that they really were as gritty. And I mean, some of it seems real. I'm not like a Greek historian. I don't pretend to be, but, you know, from some of the things I have read and seen, it does really seem like, you know, they did leave these super hardcore lifestyles and everything. And to see that displayed was great. Like for a quick example, you know, there's a punishment that they have to do where they basically take their shields and just try to push a tree over that they have no hope pushing over. And they just have to keep doing that all night. And just seeing some of that like grittiness is great. It definitely does not shy away from, in battle, there are things like gore, blood, you know, bodily fluids. And I don't know, I'm a grimdark fan, so seeing those elements put into this book, and it kind of goes with the realism part of it. You know, war is definitely not something that should be glamorized. It's obviously, especially, you know, when we're still definitely, you know, hand-to-hand combat basically with swords and just the amounts of blood and all of that kind of stuff, that rated R material. I think it was important to display that here, and it just kind of all fit with everything I have ever been told about Sparta and this battle in particular, and just, you know, war of that time period in general. So that was the last thing I wanted to mention for my life. And my dislikes are kind of ambiguous. They're not really like, oh, I didn't like the prose, I didn't like the storytelling mechanism that happened. My complaint is that this was an interesting story, but a boring story at the same time. And like I mentioned, I think this is a me problem with the historical fiction aspect of it, where I was enthralled, I was interested, but I also didn't care. And like I said, I mentioned this in the beginning, but it's like watching a documentary that you are interested in. You know, I've watched all kinds of documentaries on old wars, all that, you know, the old History Channel stuff before it turned into like American Pickers and all of that stuff. But I don't know. It almost felt like I was kind of reading a textbook that I didn't care about, but was still kind of interesting. And that's just kind of how I feel about it. And like I said, it's a weird negative to have because I can't emphasize this enough. This is a very well done book. I just didn't work for me. And so it's just one of those things. And like I said, I think another dislike that really isn't anything to do with the book, but I just feel like I need to bring it up again. It's the way people sell this book. That's going to be my other dislike, which I've kind of already harped on. But do not sell this book that this is the Battle of Thermopylae. It is, we get there, but this is really a Spartan's life. Not even just, he's not even a Spartan when he's first born. It's really a sad tale of somebody conscripting themselves to a life that is just, I mean, really awful. I mean, it's not a life I would ever want to live. I know they had all this honor and just all this stuff around it, but you know, it's really a tale of Sparta, of early Greek interactions with the Persians. And you know, if that's up your wheelhouse, that's great. You will love this book. But for me, I don't know. I read mostly science fiction and fantasy, and that's what I enjoy. And I wanted to enjoy this so much, and it was close, but it just, in the end, it was like reading good history that I didn't care about. I've never been like a huge Greek person, so yeah, that's kind of my vague. I don't really have any real dislikes. It's just like vibes. It's just how I felt, and that's not really what I strive to do here. I like to kind of be more objective and say, hey, I don't like this because X, Y, and Z, but this one is really just all vibes and feelings. And yeah, so no, those are my dislikes, even though I'm not really faulting the book itself for that. With all that being said, me thinking that maybe historical fiction really isn't for me, please recommend me some historical fiction down in the comments. I don't know of really any good ones. I think the only other ones I'm kind of even familiar with are maybe some of the King Arthur retellings. But yeah, recommend me some good historical fiction, something that maybe blurs that line a little bit more towards fantasy. Maybe I would enjoy that a little bit more. If you have read this book, let me know your thoughts. If you're thinking of reading this book, did I help you want to read it, or did I make you not want to read it? Let me know all of that down in the comments. But thanks for sticking to the end of the video and watching, and I hope you have a good one.